Got my eyes straight ahead, got my head in the game. With the red light on, I'm just waiting for the change. Keep my head down low.
Okay, this is j-fallon, and thanks for listening to The Slippery Slope. So I was thinking the other day, I was just contemplating some of the episodes that I've been doing lately, and I was thinking about some of the episodes about police that I've done, and especially I'm not sure if I put them all up on Spotify, but they're all up on YouTube channel. But I was thinking about them, and I thought, man, sometimes I thought, am I being a little harsh sometimes in my assessments of some of their actions, some of their behaviors, uh, and I was thinking about why I can come across maybe a little harsh in my assessment of them and their actions. And I thought, the issue is for me anyway, being a former police officer with the Queensland Police Service, and I look at the way I felt like I was tossed aside, really, because I didn't go along with the mandate. And I thought, what made me so frustrated with the whole situation is I look there now and I see that the police, whether it's Queensland Police, New South Wales, Victoria, whatever, they all hold themselves up and advertise themselves as having this high standard. They say that they encourage a high level of integrity, honesty, that they want to encourage transparency in their actions and their behaviors, and that they discourage inappropriate behavior by officers. And yet, constantly, I see it gets reported. You see police who miss the mark, who drop the ball, and I get that police will, everyone makes mistakes. I can get that, but then what frustrates me is look at the action that the police will take, and then I always compare it to what I did, what I did wrong, and they said, oh, I did something wrong. What I did and how they treated me, and I sit there going, wow, it doesn't seem like this is an even playing field. But then I also look at the way the services themselves, like I'll stick with Queensland Police Service, the way they hold themselves up as being this beacon of integrity, beacon of honesty, like I said, transparency, and yet so often their behaviors do not match what they proclaim themselves to be. Look at someone like an organisation like the New South Wales Police. I did that report just was it a month or so ago about how at one of the music festivals a few years ago now they'd conducted what turned out to be illegal strip searches in these music festivals. And when there was complaints made about it, they turn around and deny it. They gaslight the people, denying that any of it happened, making them think that they were going crazy. They drag the whole situation on for years and years, and then just before it's ready to go to court, it's like, oh no, they pull everything and say, oh, there's no evidence to offer. So no evidence to offer, and they admit that the those actions actually did take place. Admit to some wrongdoing going on, and you sit there going, how is this possible? How are you allowed to get away with this as an organization that hold yourself up as being the pinnacle of integrity in our society, I suppose you can say, when it comes to a government organization anyway. And this is why I think and I can feel myself getting frustrated. I can feel the sometimes the anger and that bitterness creeping into my heart because I sit there going, man, the way I got treated and the way I feel like I was mistreated by the Queensland Police Service, and then I see other officers and dropping the ball, not getting treated the same. I see the organisation themselves dropping the ball, just letting themselves off all the time, coming up with excuses, and it's frustrating. But all all of this got me to thinking about grace. Oh, and I have because I have to remind myself all the time that about grace, about grace. I know that I have 100%. I have stuffed up. This is the thing. We individuals, we can we will always mess up and hurt other people and hurt feelings and all this kind of thing. And I always thought, I think I said to my wife, if the Queensland Police had to come out and said, you know what, Jay, we can admit that we did the wrong thing by you and by all these other officers, and that we behaved inappropriately and our actions were way beyond what they needed to be, and we treated you like criminals, and it was wrong what we did. But there was just a wall of deafening silence that came from them. And I said, it's easier to deal with something and someone and to forgive and to let go when people admit wrongdoing and admit to dropping the ball. And I know, I look back at my life and I know many, many times I have dropped the ball. I've let people down. I've screwed up. And you've got to be able to take ownership of that screw up and say, well, okay, yeah, I stuffed up. I shouldn't have done this. I really, I really messed up, and I shouldn't have done this. Even there's something else in my life. I was saying to my wife just recently, that someone had called me, or said, referred back to this time of my life, because this person's known me for a long time, so I'll try and keep it very vague. Anyway, and they said, back when I was behaving like a bit of I'll say a prick is what they didn't say. They said something a bit harsher. And I said to my wife, the funny thing is, I would find it a lot easier to handle. And I try, and I keep telling myself I've got to move on, got to forgive, got to forget. But I would find it a lot easier to handle if that person turned around and said, "Oh, we can also admit that maybe the reason why you behaved like that was because we mistreated you. And this got you angry. This got you frustrated. We mistreated you." But there was never that admission from this other person that, oh, yeah, we kind of caused the problems. We kind of caused it. We kind of gave you all the grief. And then, you came out and acted in a very angry manner. I said to my wife, it'd be a lot easier if they just came out and said, yeah, okay, maybe some of it was actually our fault, instead of just calling me names. But like, getting back to this, so I was thinking about the police and the episodes and why I thought, man, sometimes am I a bit harsh on the police? And I thought, well, no, they hold themselves up, you know, uh, reporting to be this kind of beacon of integrity in society. But yet I am so glad of God's grace in my life, and God's grace and what he shows, what the Bible shows. I think about, I've been thinking about, the Old Testament law, and I'm going to read a bit about what it says in Bible Hub about. I like a lot of stuff in Bible Hub. I think it's good, got some good explanations. But talking about Old Testament law, it says the Old Testament law was given to establish a covenant relationship between God and his chosen people, Israel. It was intended to set Israel apart as a holy nation and a kingdom of priests. It says that in Exodus 19:5-6. The law provided guidelines for worship. It's important that it was guidelines, okay? It provided guidelines for worship, ethical conduct, and civil governance, reflecting God's holiness, because we're not holy, we're not perfect. We can't reach those, the pinnacles of integrity that I've been talking about, but God's holiness, it's his holiness and justice. It was also a means to reveal human sinfulness and the need for redemption. As Paul later explains in the New Testament, therefore the law has become our tutor to lead us to Christ so that we may be justified by faith. Because the Old Testament all points to the New, all points to Jesus. Further down the page, it says the Old Testament law holds significant theological importance. In the New Testament, Jesus Christ affirmed the law's value, stating, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." It was in Matthew 5. And through his life, death, and resurrection, Jesus fulfilled the law's requirements and established a new covenant, offering salvation by grace through faith. So I was reflecting on, how I'm always ragging on, Queensland Police and police services and how they're dropping the ball. But I was thinking about grace, and I thought the issue is with, and it's not just with police services, it's with all these government organizations. They all hold themselves up as the pinnacle of integrity and transparency and all this kind of thing. But but then they constantly overlook their own flaws. They want to hold everyone else up and, hold everyone else up to this standard, but then they constantly drop the ball. And then they constantly overlook when they drop the ball and say, well, we're bad. We're only human. Let's just move on. But then when someone else drops the ball, someone else might break the law or do something wrong or, not quite hit the mark, not quite have the integrity that they say that we should all have. Well, then they'll come down on them like a ton of bricks. But I was thinking, man, thank God he has such, or had and has shown such grace for us. And you had that Old Testament law, which no one could actually live up to. No one could live that life to perfection. No one was perfect. But then that's why God sent his son, Jesus. Jesus lived that perfect life. Jesus was that perfect sacrifice that needed to happen. So, I'm not about to stop talking about the police and trying to hold them accountable and trying to point out that, hey, you hold yourselves up to this standard, but you're constantly failing. But unfortunately, this is government. This is the world, and this will always happen. And I'll continue. I'll try not to be so angry and bitter at times, but I'm going to continue to try and hold them accountable when it's needed to be, I think. But also remember and remind myself that it's only for grace. It's only because of God's grace in my life that I'm able to be sitting here, that I'm able to be here at all. And that I think we all need to remember that, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, so that whosoever would believe in him should not perish, will not perish, but have everlasting life. It's that grace that God looked down, saw the world, and he knew that his Son was going to be there, would die on the cross. He would be that fulfillment, and he would stand in the gap. He would stand in the gap between God and man, and then he would be able to be raised from the dead. And then we can have faith and rely on God's grace. Not that we're to take grace, uh, you know, not that we're just to take grace for granted, but just remind ourselves that it's only by His grace that we are here, that we are able to be saved, that we are able to come into a relationship with God. And so I thank God that, yeah, I know I stumble, I know I fall, I know I fail, and I have failed, but I thank God that He is that pinnacle of honesty, the very pinnacle of honesty and integrity and love, and that he doesn't fail. And even though we have these government organizations that hold themselves up to be these, these beacons of honesty and whatever, they will always fail. But God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, God never fails us, never fails us. And it's only by his grace. And I just want to thank God for his grace. Uh, this world you look at this world and we are on this slippery slope. Everyone, you go on social media, whether it be TikTok, not that I'm on TikTok these days, but TikTok, Insta, all that stuff, everyone's holding themselves up as having the message, having some kind of wisdom, knowing which way to go. And yet they constantly fail because it's only one way. There is only one way to be saved. And that's why Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Listen, just remember, no matter how the world fails you, and because the world will fail you, people will fail you, the people who are closest to you in your life, they will fail you, and you will fail them. And it's important for us to remember grace, and God's grace for us, and that we need to also show love and grace for others in our lives. This is all my opinion, my thinking. Hope this helps you. And please go and check out my music, j-fallon. Check out my music, check out the rest of my podcasts, and please, if you're listening on something that's not YouTube or on one of the other platforms, please give me a like and a share, and even a comment, even if it's just a even if it's just a one-word comment or something. Yeah, it just really help. Thanks for listening. I'm j-fallon. Thanks for listening to The Slippery Slope.
Here comes the sun, dancing on the moon. Here comes my baby in the distance. I can smell a sweet perfume. Can you see the stars? Dancing to a tune. I know my baby, she's waiting in the distance and singing her own tune. I'm still in love.